My dear friends, before we start, I asked you all to press a like and leave your comment. This will help a lot to promote this video and to release news stories as soon as possible. It's not hard for you, but it's a pleasure for me. Thank you. I still remember that chilling night vividly. My name is Ruben, and I was on an adventure in the dense woods surrounding Narrow Hills with my friend Zoe. The moon hung low, casting eerie shadows that danced among the trees as we made our way deeper into the heart of Haverford. The atmosphere was thick with the scent of pine and the anticipation of the unknown. "Do you really think we'll find anything?" Zoe asked, her voice tinged with excitement and a hint of fear. I could see her gripping the flashlight tightly, its beam flickering like her confidence. "Of course, this place is full of legends," I replied, trying to sound braver than I felt. The locals spoke of a creature that haunted these woods, something they called the Sorrow's Cream. Stories of its ghastly screams and shadowy figure sent shivers down my spine, but I was determined to see if there was any truth to the tales. As we hiked, the forest seemed to close in around us. The chirping of crickets was drowned out by an unsettling silence that enveloped everything. Suddenly, a loud, piercing scream echoed through the trees. My heart raced as I turned to Zoe, whose eyes were wide with terror. "Did you hear that?" she whispered, almost too afraid to break the silence. I nodded, fear coursing through me. "It sounded like a woman," I replied, my voice barely a whisper. Determined not to let fear get the better of us, we pressed on. The deeper we went, the more the air seemed to crackle with tension. Every rustle of leaves or snap of a twig made me jump, but I forced myself to focus on the thrill of the hunt. "Maybe it's just some wild animal," Zoe suggested, attempting to reassure us both. But deep down, I knew there was something more sinister lurking in the shadows. After what felt like hours, we reached a small clearing. The moonlight spilled into the space, illuminating the trees like ghostly sentinels. Suddenly, we heard it again, the scream, but this time it was closer, almost surrounding us. My stomach dropped, and a cold sweat broke out on my forehead. "Ruben, we need to go," Zoe exclaimed, grabbing my arm with urgency. But before we could turn back, a massive shadow swept across the clearing. It blocked the moonlight, and a chill ran down my spine. There, soaring above us, was the Sorrow's Cream. Its grotesque form was half human, half bat, with massive wings that spanned the sky. Is that real?" Zoe stammered, her voice trembling. I couldn't answer. I was frozen in place, a mix of awe and terror. The creature let out a horrifying screech that echoed through the trees, sending a flock of birds flying from their perches. "Rot!" I shouted, snapping out of my trance. We sprinted back into the woods, the creature's cries ringing in our ears. As we dashed through the underbrush, I could hear the flapping of wings behind us, echoing like a heartbeat. My lungs burned, and I could feel panic rising, threatening to swallow me whole. "Why did we come here?" Zoe cried, stumbling over a root and falling to the ground. I stopped, my heart racing, and turned back to help her up. "We can't stop now," I urged, pulling her to her feet. "We have to get to the road." We pushed through the thick foliage, the sound of the creature growing fainter as we put distance between us. But just when we thought we were safe, I caught a glimpse of it soaring overhead. "Keep going," I shouted, and we ran until our legs felt like lead. The screams faded, and the moonlight began to filter through the trees again. Finally, we stumbled onto a narrow path that led us out of the woods and onto the road. We fell against a nearby tree, panting and wide-eyed. "I can't believe we just saw that," Zoe gasped, her breath coming in short gasps. "Neither can I replied, still trying to process the night's events. "But it's not over yet." "What do you mean?" she asked, concern etched across her face. "The locals said the creature comes for those who dare to challenge it. We shouldn't have come here." Just then, A chilling breeze swept through the trees, and I felt a presence behind us. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up, and I dared to glance over my shoulder. There, silhouetted against the moonlight, was the Sorrow's Cream, perched on a branch, watching us with its unblinking eyes. "Reuben, we need to go now," Zoe cried, her voice shaking. We ran down the road, adrenaline surging through us. The terror of what we'd seen haunted us, the image of that monstrous creature forever etched in our minds. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being hunted, that the creature was toying with us. After what felt like an eternity, we finally reached the safety of the nearest town. We stumbled into the brightly lit diner, gasping for breath and trying to explain ourselves to the puzzled patrons. "What happened out there?" an old man asked, eyeing us suspiciously. We saw it," I exclaimed, trying to catch my breath. "The Sorrow's Cream." The diner fell silent, and I could see the disbelief in their eyes. "You two need to be careful," the old man warned, his voice low. "Many have seen it, but few return unscathed." As we settled into a booth, shaking from the night's events, I couldn't help but glance out the window. The woods loomed in the distance, dark and menacing. We had survived, but I knew this was only the beginning of our encounter with the creature of legend. Days turned into weeks, and I tried to push the memory of that night away. But the creature haunted my dreams, its terrifying screech echoing in my mind. I often found myself staring into the woods, waiting for the next scream to pierce the silence. "Do you think it's really gone?" Zoe asked one evening as we sat on my porch, gazing into the darkness. "I don't know," I admitted, feeling a shiver run down my spine. "But I have a feeling it's still watching." With each passing day, the legend of the Sorrow's Cream grew stronger. I started to see stories in the news about mysterious sightings and inexplicable screams coming from the woods. It seemed that the creature had claimed its territory, and anyone who dared venture too close risked becoming part of its chilling tale. "I think we should go back," Zoe suggested one night, her eyes sparkling with a mixture of fear and excitement. "Are you crazy?" I replied, incredulous. "We barely escaped with our lives." "Exactly. We need to find out more. It's not just a story. It's real." Her determination ignited a flicker of curiosity within me. Despite the terror, I found myself drawn to the mystery of the Sorrow's Cream. Reluctantly, I agreed. We prepared for another journey into the depths of the woods, equipped with flashlights, a camera, and the resolve to uncover the truth behind the legend. As we stepped back into the forest, the air felt charged with anticipation. The trees loomed overhead like ancient guardians, and the silence was almost deafening. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, a mix of fear and exhilaration. With every step, I remembered the creature's horrific scream and the dark figure soaring above us. Yet, beneath that fear lay an insatiable thirst for understanding. "What was the Sorrow's Cream?" "Let's find a good spot to set up," I suggested, trying to sound confident. We found a small clearing, and as the sun dipped below the horizon, the woods transformed into a world of shadows and whispers. As night fell, we sat in silence, waiting, the tension palpable. Suddenly, a distant scream pierced the air, sending a jolt through my spine. "Is it coming?" Zoe whispered, clutching my arm. "I don't know." I breathed, straining to hear. The scream echoed again, closer this time. Panic surged within me. "We need to go," I urged, but Zoe held me back. "Wait, look," she pointed into the darkness. A shadow moved among the trees, growing larger and more defined. My heart raced as I saw the familiar outline of the Sorrow's Cream. It circled above us, its wings unfurling against the moonlight, casting a looming shadow over the clearing. "We have to get out of here," I shouted, but Zoe stood transfixed, mesmerized by the creature's grace. "Reuben, it's beautiful," she breathed, her eyes wide with wonder. Before I could respond, the creature let out a shriek that echoed through the forest, rattling my bones. I grabbed Zoe's arm, dragging her back toward the path. We sprinted through the trees, the creature's wings flapping behind us, the sound a haunting reminder of our impending doom. "Keep running," I yelled, adrenaline pushing me forward. We burst out of the woods, gasping for breath as we reached the road. The moon illuminated the path, but we didn't stop until we reached the nearest town. Later, as we sat in that diner, trying to make sense of our encounter, I realized that the Sorrows Cream was more than just a monster. It was a guardian of the woods, an entity bound to its domain. "What do you think it wants?" Zoe asked, sipping her coffee. "I think it wants to be left alone," I replied, recalling its piercing gaze. "But it also wants us to understand it, to recognize the legends as more than just stories." From that day forward, we became storytellers, sharing our experiences with anyone who would listen. The tale of the Sorrows Cream grew, woven into the fabric of local lore, reminding us of the beauty and terror of the unknown. And every time I heard the wind howl through the trees, I remembered that night, forever changed by the whispers of the woods and the secrets they held. In the weeks that followed, Zoe and I immersed ourselves in the world of local legends. We read everything we could find about the Sorrows Cream and other mythical creatures from the region. We interviewed residents, collected their stories, and pieced together a tapestry of folklore that connected the past to the present. One evening, while we were sifting through a dusty collection of old newspapers at the town library, we stumbled across an article from the 1970s. The headline read, "Mysterious creatures sighted near Nariel Hills. Residents on high alert." My pulse quickened as I read about a group of campers who reported seeing a shadowy figure hovering above the treetops. It screamed, sending them running for their lives. "Look at this," I said, showing Zoe the article. "This has been going on for decades. Maybe it's just a coincidence," she replied, though I could see the excitement in her eyes. "Or maybe there's a pattern we can uncover." Determined to dig deeper, we began to interview the older generation in the town, seeking anyone who might have first-hand experiences with the Sorrows Cream. We met an elderly woman named Livia who had lived in the area all her life. Her hands shook as she recounted her own encounter. "When I was a girl," Livia began, her voice a trembling whisper, "we went camping near the river. One night, I woke to a loud screeching. It sounded like a woman screaming. I peeked out of the tent and saw it, the creature. It was enormous, with wings that blocked out the moonlight. I thought it was going to take me away." Zoe and I exchanged glances, both feeling the weight of Livia's story. "What happened next?" I asked, leaning in closer. "It flew off into the night," Livia continued, her eyes glazing over with memory. "But I always wondered why it didn't come for me. Maybe it had its reasons." Her words hung in the air, making me consider the creature's intentions. Was it a protector of the woods, a being misunderstood and feared? I felt a pull toward this idea, and it ignited a passion in me to learn more. That night, we gathered at Zoe's house to discuss what we had learned. Surrounded by scattered papers and empty coffee cups, we mapped out our findings. "We need to connect the dots," Zoe suggested, her brow furrowed in concentration. "What if the Sorrows Cream is linked to local tragedies? Each sighting could coincide with something significant. Like the campfire stories?" I added. "Maybe it's a warning of sorts." "Exactly. And if we can find a common thread, we might figure out how to communicate with it." The next day, we decided to return to Nariel Hills and gather more information about the legends. Armed with a notebook, a camera, and a sense of purpose, we set off on our adventure. As we hiked deeper into the woods, the air became heavy with anticipation. The sunlight barely broke through the thick canopy, and shadows danced around us, whispering secrets that seemed just out of reach. "Do you think we'll see it again?" Zoe asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I hope so," I replied, though a part of me was terrified of encountering the creature again. "But this time, we need to be ready. We have to approach it differently." As dusk fell, we reached the clearing where we had first seen the Sorrows Cream. The atmosphere felt charged, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. We set up our cameras and flashlights, hoping to capture evidence of whatever might come our way. Do you think it will respond if we call for it? Zoe wondered, her eyes scanning the treetops. It's worth a try, I said, feeling a mix of fear and excitement. Maybe it just wants to be acknowledged. We stood in silence for a moment before I cleared my throat. Sorrows Creek, I called out, trying to project my voice. If you're here, we mean no harm. We just want to understand. The woods felt eerily quiet, and for a brief moment, I felt a sense of vulnerability. Would the creature come? Would it hear me? Suddenly, the ground beneath us trembled, and a chilling wind whipped through the clearing. My heart raced as a low growl echoed from the depths of the forest, followed by a series of frantic flaps. Reuben, look! Zoe gasped, pointing toward the treetops. Emerging from the shadows was the Sorrow's Cream, its massive wings unfurling in a display that seemed almost graceful. Its eyes locked onto mine, and for a moment, I felt a connection, a shared understanding that transcended fear. Stay calm, I whispered to Zoe, gripping her arm. It's watching us. The creature hovered above us, its shape illuminated by the moonlight. I could see the glint of its eyes, filled with an otherworldly intelligence. Sorrows Creek, I called again, my voice steady. We're not here to hurt you. We just want to know who you are. The creature let out a low, haunting sound that echoed through the trees, and I felt the air shift around us. Zoe squeezed my hand, her breath hitching in her throat. Did you hear that? She whispered. I nodded, tried to decipher the tone of the creature's cry. It felt like a warning, a reminder of the unknown depths of the forest. In that moment, I knew we had to take a leap of faith. We understand you've been misunderstood, I said, raising my voice. We want to help tell your story. To our astonishment, the Sorrow's Cream descended slowly, landing just a few feet away. Its massive form blocked out the moonlight, but there was an undeniable beauty to its presence. I could see the intricate patterns on its wings, resembling a tapestry woven from shadows and light. Can you understand us? Zoe asked, her voice trembling with awe. The creature tilted its head, almost curiously. For a fleeting second, it felt like time stood still. The tension hung in the air, thick with unspoken words and shared emotions. I know you're not just a monster, I continued, trying to bridge the gap between us. You're part of this land, part of our stories, but we need your help to make sure your truth is told. Suddenly, the creature emitted a sound, a mixture of a screech and a psalm that reverberated through the clearing. The melody carried an emotional weight that resonated deep within me, filling me with an inexplicable sense of hope. Reuben, I think it's trying to communicate, Zoe exclaimed, her eyes wide with wonder. The Sorrow's Cream spread its wings wide, and in that moment, it looked majestic, not monstrous. I could sense its pain, its sorrow for being trapped in a cycle of fear and misunderstanding. It wanted to be recognized, not as a threat, but as a guardian of the woods. As it let out another cry, I felt a warmth wash over me, as if it were sharing its memories, stories of the forest, the tragedies it had witnessed, and the beauty it had protected over the years. Let's show it we care, I said to Zoe, stepping forward. We can help tell its story. Zoe nodded, and together we knelt before the creature, our hearts racing. We're here for you, she whispered, her voice steady. We want to be your voice. The Sorrow's Cream seemed to pause, and for a moment, we shared an understanding that transcended the boundaries of fear. It slowly lowered its head, and I could see the intelligence in its eyes, the flicker of hope reflecting back at us. We'll make sure the world knows your truth, I promised, feeling a surge of determination. We'll write about you, share your story, and ensure that future generations understand who you really are. As the night wore on, we forged an unbreakable bond with the Sorrow's Cream, and in the heart of the forest, we became its storytellers. Each scream and each shadow became a part of our narrative, weaving together the threads of fear and understanding. By dawn, The creature took flight once more, its wings beating against the sky as it soared into the distance. I felt a bittersweet ache in my heart, knowing that this encounter had changed us forever. "We did it," Zoe said softly, her eyes reflecting the light of the rising sun. "We connected with it." "Yeah," I replied, still trying to comprehend the depth of our experience. "But this is just the beginning. We have so much work to do." Over the following months, Zoe and I poured our energy into documenting the creature's story. We interviewed more locals, collected their tales, and delved into the history of Narrow Hills. We discovered that the area had a rich tapestry of legends intertwined with the Sorrow's Cream, including tales of lost love, ancient battles, and the struggles of nature against humanity. As we gathered stories, we also organized community events, inviting locals to share their experiences with the Sorrow's Cream. We created a space for dialogue, where people could express their fears and curiosities without judgment. Slowly, the town began to change. What was once a tale of terror transformed into a narrative of hope, resilience, and understanding. People began to see the woods in a new light, respecting its mysteries rather than fearing them. One crisp autumn evening, we hosted a storytelling festival at the foot of Narrow Hills. The air was electric with anticipation as families gathered around the bonfire, the flickering flames casting long shadows on the trees. "Tonight, we honor the stories of our past," I announced, standing before the crowd. "We share our fears, our legends, and the truth of the Sorrow's Cream." Zoe joined me, her smile bright against the backdrop of the darkening sky. "This is a celebration of connection," she added. "Together, we will rewrite the narrative." As the evening progressed, people took turns sharing their tales, laughter mingling with gasps as we recounted the history of the Sorrow's Cream. With each story, the fear that once gripped the community began to dissolve, replaced by understanding and empathy. Just as I thought the night couldn't get more magical, a rustling in the trees caught my attention. Everyone fell silent, eyes widening in awe as the Sorrow's Cream appeared above us, soaring gracefully through the air. "It's here," someone whispered, and I felt my heart race as I stood rooted to the spot. The creature landed on a nearby tree, its silhouette framed by the moonlight. The crowd erupted into applause, and I could see the wonder in their faces. "Thank you for sharing our story," I called out, raising my voice to be heard over the cheering crowd. "Thank you for recognizing its truth." The Sorrow's Cream let out a melodic cry, as if answering my call. In that moment, it was no longer just a creature of fear. It had become a symbol of hope, a reminder that understanding could conquer even the darkest of legends. The festival continued into the night, filled with laughter, music, and stories shared under the watchful gaze of the Sorrow's Cream. It felt as if the boundaries between the creature and the townsfolk had blurred, and we were all connected in a web of shared experiences and emotions. As the evening drew to a close, I stood on the edge of the clearing, watching the flickering flames and listening to the joyful voices around me. Zoe joined my side, her eyes shining with pride. "We did it, Reuben," she said, her voice filled with emotion. "We really changed things." I smiled, feeling the weight of the past lift from my shoulders. "Yeah, and it feels amazing." The Sorrow's Cream took flight once more, disappearing into the night sky. But I knew it would always be a part of us, a reminder of the power of understanding and the beauty of connection. From that night on, every time the wind howled through the trees, it carried with it the whispers of the Sorrow's Cream, reminding us of our journey and the stories we had shared. The woods were alive with history, and we had become its guardians. As I lay in bed that night, the moonlight streaming through my window, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. We had transformed fear into understanding, and in doing so, we had woven ourselves into the tapestry of the land. I closed my eyes, allowing the gentle rustling of the leaves outside to lull me to sleep. In my dreams, I soared through the skies alongside the Sorrow's Cream, free and unbound, exploring the mysteries of the world and embracing the beauty of the unknown.